impressed you, Dan, about these 49ers last night without the key cog in their offense?
Fair to say that Brock Purdy over the past couple years has been a top 5 quarterback. I still think he's underrated. If you ask me what I thought was the most important physical asset a quarterback needs to have, it is anticipation and ball placement. That's literally the thing he does best. I mean, the ball comes out of his hands before guys are breaking in their route or getting open as consistently as anybody in the league, certainly up there with players like Tua Tagovailoa, and it's always almost in between either the middle of a face mask or the middle of the numbers, the receiver. Hawk, for me, I feel like he's throwing marshmallows to guys. Like, it's such a catchable ball. And watch these catches. Very rarely are guys constantly stretching out or in an uncomfortable place to try to go catch the football. For a guy that's performed at the level that he has, I still think he's underrated. I don't know when it comes to the anticipation and ball placement, I don't know how many guys in the league are doing it better than Brock Purdy.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. That throw that he had to Ayuk that he dropped was
the touchdown one that he dropped.
It was a ridiculous throw. And I think that's what's like both scary and frustrating about the 49ers because they have so much firepower at every single position. And even last night when you're watching this tape, like, yeah, you can clearly see all the talent. Now you throw Jordan Mason into that mix. But this is the version of them that are still figuring it out. Like, Ayuk is still getting, acclimated after not being in camp. Again, you throw Mason into this thing, but when you look at Debo, Ayuk, and what they did in the run game, like if you watch them block, they look like two guys, typically when you're a receiver and it's like, oh, the blocking guys, they can't get open. That is not the case for San Francisco wide receivers. When you watch Ayuk, when you watch Debo in the run game, it's no surprise why a guy like Jordan Mason can go in there and do what he did.
I'd also say this. If we were trying to nitpick a point of their football team last year, it was their offensive line. It wasn't great. The way that it looked against a very good New York defensive line last night in that new right guard that they have, it looks like it's going to be a strength for the football team.
Yeah.
Well, and it's worth pointing out, too, that you mentioned Ayuk not being there during camp, but Shanahan said they really didn't have their entire offense until this last week of practice leading into this first game. So they're probably just getting started, which is scary for whoever's going to face them. What did you take away, Dan, from Aaron Rodgers' first full game with the Jets?
I'd be really encouraged. I really would be after watching the game and then watching the tape. Number one, could Aaron still throw it? I guess we believed he could, but did he actually go do it in a game? Yep, there were some big-time throws in this football game. This ball down to the sideline to Allen Lazard is absolutely ridiculous. I think Lazard won on the quote-unquote free play touchdown. It's perfect. Aaron's throwing this ball whether it's a free play or not. Now, he missed a throw or two, but I think that's the rust. Number two is the connection with Garrett Wilson real. Yep, I mean, that was a checked play at the line of scrimmage. The inside slot fade. This is a checked play with that wrap in down in the red zone, throwing them that skinny slant to make sure you protect them. And then did the offensive line handle a really dominant defensive line, at least pass blocking wise, relatively well? I think run blocking, they missed some landmarks, and San Francisco's speed caught up to them a little bit. But I think those three big takeaways, that's a lot to build on offensively.
For sure. To your point, this is a really good defense that they were opening the season with, and they have a lot of questions around them. To me, it felt more like there are things that this offense needs to be acclimated to. They got to find a legit number two outside of Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson has to get used to being a number one with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. There's going to be a lot more pressure put on you to make some of these plays. But like there were times when Aaron Rodgers would break the pocket or he would go into scramble mode, even with the clean pocket, and it almost looked like the receivers and pass catchers didn't know what to do. Like they're not used to having that amount of time for their quarterback and say, well, let me go find a throwing lane for Aaron to find me on. And that's going to take, them getting acclimated to having an offensive line that looked as good as they did last night.
Yeah, look, the Jets feel really good about, obviously, Rodgers. I mean, that's kind of an understatement, but also just sort of the connection he's formed with Wilson, the connection he brings with him from Green Bay with Allen Lazard. Mike Williams really not a factor in last night's game, but the Jets believe moving forward he will be a factor as likely their number two wide receiver. And then, of course, Breece Hall. To me, like the issues that surprised me were the issues the Jets had on defense. The edge rushers are a couple former first-round picks that that kind of need to start playing like it, especially if they're going to maintain their leverage in the Hassan Reddick contract talks. But they got pushed around on defense by a 49ers team that was more than ready for them in terms of the way they schemed up the run game. And the Jets are back in New Jersey today, sort of licking their wounds. They have a short week, road trip to Tennessee, an even shorter week next week with a Thursday night game against New England, so they don't have much time to feel sorry for themselves.
It was interesting because Robert Saleh told us in the game broadcast that he wasn't concerned about the run defense at all, but I wonder if that changes after what we saw last night.
The interior got whooped.
Yeah. Well, this was before the game, so he might change his tune afterward. How about this from the 49ers? They're shutting you out, Dan, saying that you know ball since you were the only one on Get Up to take the 49ers yesterday. The only problem is, though, you're flanked by Rex Ryan, who coached the Jets, Damian Woody, who played for the Jets, and Mike Greenberg, who thinks he's on the Jets. So, Dan, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the next game that I picked that I don't think San Francisco, they're all going to be mother effing me. So it is what it is. I got one right this weekend, thank God. I'll take it, though.
He plays the position of ultimate leadership in sports, in my opinion, as the quarterback. You can put a huge value on measures of success that don't reach a Super Bowl. I will say this, that any time that we've ever made key players such as Troy Aikman, the most highest paid player in the game, we won Super Bowls.
Oh, he's got to get something in there. What do you think about those comments from Jerry Hawk?
You know what? Damn it, I agree with Jerry for the first time in a long time. He is absolutely right. With great power comes great responsibility, and Dak is in that position. Now, the beautiful part about what Dak Prescott is now in his career versus previously, I feel like he's done a better job of handling the pressure, handling the outside noise, and he just focuses on being a quarterback. If he can continue that in year 2 of McCarthy's offense, I actually think the Cowboys have a good chance to make a run at the Super Bowl.
Look at you agreeing with Jerry. All right,
Crazy.
Los Angeles next. For Puka Nacua was placed on the IR yesterday with a knee injury, meaning he'll miss at least 4 games. But Puka isn't the only Rams player dealing with injuries. They entered Sunday's game against the Lions with Darius Williams, Tyler Higbee, and starting tackle Rob Havenstein all inactive due to injuries. And their other starting tackle, Alaric Jackson, was inactive because of a suspension. Then they lose Nacua and 3 offensive linemen in the game against Detroit. Guards Steve Avila and Kevin Dodson, tackle Joe Noteboom, they're all hurt. It's a long list of players there. Here's head coach Sean McVay on the team's mindset moving forward.
We're not going to sulk. We're not going to say, why is me? We're going to get the next guy ready to go. We're going to get some new bodies in here, and then we'll be grateful when we do get those guys that are injured back. But, the league, it continues to move. And it's a thankless deal with some of these injuries, and it is unfortunate. And I feel for the players that are getting injured. But you're not going to see any pity from me, in terms of I feel bad and want to support the players, but there's not going to be any excuses for us not to move forward the right way, because I've gone down that road before and we're not doing that again.
The Rams are at Arizona on Sunday. I mean, I'm sitting there feeling like I'm reading off the entire roster there, Graz, with all the injuries, 5 offensive linemen. What more can you tell us about how the Rams are going to try to deal with all this?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to patch it together for at least one more week because you mentioned Alaric Jackson has 1 game left on a suspension. Rob Havenstein, one of their tackles, he missed the game with an ankle injury. They have some degree of hope that he could come back this week, but they don't know for sure. Joe Noteboom is probably going to miss several weeks with a high ankle sprain. Kevin Dodson, Steve Avila, McVay said is probably going to go on IR. Kevin Dodson has an ankle sprain, but probably going to have to play through it because they're really running low on guys. You see Jonah Jackson probably shift over to one of the guards. They have a 6th-round rookie they can put in at center. It's going to take some work, and they are, as you heard Sean mention, probably going to have to add 1 or 2 guys at the offensive line positions just to get through this week and maybe the next few.
And, Arizona looked pretty good, too, week 1. Hawk, how can the Rams get over all of this and still be able to make a successful season here?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Back to you, Laura. No, Cooper Kupp obviously had a big game this week, but, when you watch him and Puka play together, it's the balance that it creates because there's such weapons on both sides. So it's going to get a lot harder for Cooper Kupp, and they're going to need that receiver to step up, who I like is Tyler Johnson because of his ability after the catch. When you watch that game against Detroit, you saw how that is such a big part of this offense. They're throwing short passes, and these guys are going to get the max amount of yards. Puka's great at it. Coop is great at it. And also Johnson showed a 63-yard reception. If he can step into that role, which I think he will, and I think they'll keep Robinson in the slot, that'll help take some of that pressure off of Cooper Kupp and keep this offense rolling.
Matthew Stafford was hit on Sunday night just about as much as he's been hit as a Los Angeles Ram, and that was with mostly their starting group. I mean, half of their starting offense is out. If there's a guy in a team that can handle it, somehow it's Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. I don't know exactly how you go about, because the skill group is there. Yep. You mentioned Tyler Johnston. Kobe Parkinson was nice. I thought Jordan Whittington was great as a first-time pro. So you think that they've got people to throw the ball to, and
Are there
McVay,
things in their scheme that they can do to sort of alleviate the O-line problem? Like,
it sounds great on paper, yes.
Yeah.
Like the way that they shrink down their formations, the way that they create leverage with their motions, the way that they try to get the ball out quickly in their short passing game, yes. It's just hard to envision that being successful over the course of a couple weeks in the NFL with 80% of a backup offensive line going. Again, if there's a group that can get it done, it's Sean and Matthew. Yep. It's just, you'd much rather it be the offensive line, the skill group being the problem and the offensive line being attacked. This was going to be one of the best offensive lines in the league this year. Certainly the interior three. In a week, they're gone. That's tough to overcome.
I was looking at the schedule too. After this week, they've got the 49ers.
I think like Arizona. So Arizona this week.
Yep.
They did a good job for the most part with some of their pressure packages versus Buffalo. Mm-hmm. We just watched what San Francisco did last night in totality. Like if they can find a way to go 2-2, that'll be an act of Jesus.